Podcasting out of Alliance Wrestling Studios, pontificating on pro wrestling, the innovator of Talk NWA, he is J. Cal!
Well, apparently the camera's not working already. But here we are. Brighton Begora, lads and lasses, welcome to the pre-party. I am your host, J. Cal. And this is a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. It's been a very strange couple of days, guys, and I'll be the first one to admit I don't know what to talk about. On Tuesday, as some of you may know, we took a sabbatical. We took a knee, if you will. And if this offends some people, I'm sorry. If you are uncomfortable with this topic, you don't have to watch. And if you really don't like what I'm saying, you could hit the unsubscribe button. But I feel compelled with my limited audience, with 192 subscribers, with 2 people watching right now, I feel it's my obligation to say something. Wrestling has a way to unify. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. I've seen it for 41 years as a fan of professional wrestling. I've seen all walks of life enjoy pro wrestling. It doesn't matter if you're white or if you're black or if you're Mexican or if you're Japanese or Chinese, or it doesn't really matter. Your race, your creed, your religion, your sexual orientation is never really determined if you can be a fan of professional wrestling. Now, there's been times in our lives where pro wrestling hasn't been kind to people of color. There's been times in our life where wrestling hasn't been kind to people of different sexual orientation, different religions, different creeds. I think the world is changing, but I don't know. Obviously, you guys are well aware that in this country, the United States of America, after about 3 months of shelter in place and staying home because of COVID-19, a tragedy happened. A senseless murder happened. A man died. And people got angry. And I think if you're not angry, you're part of the problem. And I do think it's horrible that all the destruction and devastation that's happening right now in this country. But I also think that this wasn't the first time, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. This isn't a funny situation. This isn't the first time that the black community tried to tell us, as a collective, as a group, they tried to tell us that things weren't okay, that they were not okay. And collectively as a nation, we didn't listen. And collectively as a nation, people were told to shut up, to get them off the field, get them off the basketball court, stick to playing basketball, stick to playing football. Hell, one man lost his job because he took a knee. I have a lot to say about this, guys, and this isn't pro wrestling. I mean, there's elements of pro wrestling that have been impacted by race over the years. You know, Bobo Brazil was proclaimed the world heavyweight champion of the I think they called it the Negro division. Bobo Brazil was the first WWA world champion. He never got the opportunity to become NWA world champion, but challenged for the title on multiple occasions. You know, it was 1991 when we saw Ron Simmons win the WCW World Heavyweight Champion. It was 2002 we saw Ron the Truth Killings win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. It was much later than that we saw The Rock win the WWF excuse me, not much later, before that, excuse me, I apologize. We saw The Rock win the WWF World's Heavyweight Championship, and of course, Booker T winning the World Heavyweight Championship. And there were other times where guys, were close. I mean, I think it's a shame that when you start talking about world heavyweight champions, guys who were predominantly in the guy in that wrestling promotion, that until recently they really didn't get their just dues. And I know the world's changed a lot since 1948, and I know the National Wrestling Alliance has gone through many, many changes over the years, but they're just as guilty as everybody else. And I'm not trying to belittle Dave Lagana or Booker T. Booker T? Did I say Booker T? I'm sorry, guys. My head's not in the game. I meant to say Billy Corgan. I don't know why I said Booker T. I don't mean to belittle the owner of the National Wrestling Alliance, the executive vice president of the NWA. I don't mean to belittle these guys. The point I'm trying to make is diversity in professional wrestling has always been an issue. There is a lot of talented individuals who, for whatever reason, never made it to the next step. And we celebrate those who have. And we always wonder about what happened to those guys who should have. I don't know. I know I'm not the right guy to be talking about this. I can empathize all day long with the plight of people of color, but I don't have the same struggles that they do, and I don't face the same stereotypes, the same prejudice. So, what's going on in this country sucks, bottom line. It sucks. And I'm sorry people are losing their property, and I'm sorry that buildings are burning on fire, but what absolutely can't continue to happen is people being killed in the street by those who are sworn to serve and protect. So I don't want to spend the rest of this podcast talking about that, but I mean, it does speak volumes about where pro wrestling has come from where it was when you've got, I mean, I don't normally say nice things about TNA wrestling, or Impact Wrestling, excuse me, but Bobby Lashley had the opportunity to shine as a world heavyweight champion. Right now, the angle they're doing with Moose being the TNA heavyweight champion. Let's not forget Jay Lethal, who was a longtime Ring of Honor world heavyweight champion. I do think there are the state of professional wrestling is moving faster than maybe societal norms. I don't think anybody has room for stereotypes and racism in pro wrestling. And I know that on the independent circuits, and maybe it is even in the larger circuits, that this is still happening. But I'm really proud of those who are calling it out. I'm really proud of those who are pointing the finger and saying this needs to stop. And like I said, I'm probably not the right guy to be talking about this. But I'm tired of seeing my brothers and sisters being hurt. I'm tired of seeing Americans being treated as anything but equal to. And so that's all I want to do, talk about as far as that goes. I showed the clip of Ron Killings winning the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, defeating Ken Shamrock, as a point that wrestling should unite. Wrestling should be a place. Wrestling's always been escapism, guys. I recently saw the post by by Bubba Ray Dudley with him and Devon, and he said something like, I never saw him anything more than my brother, or anything less than my brother. And could you imagine if we lived in Dudleyville? I don't know, guys. But I started to do a whole episode yesterday. I was going to pre-record the PreParty, but honestly, I didn't like what it looked like. I didn't like how it felt. I still might release it later, but this isn't the appropriate forum. Maybe it'll just be a J-Cal's view. I don't know. I see that I don't have a whole lot of people watching. I didn't advertise this show today, and next week, I will be posting a pre-recorded video. Family commitments have got me unable to go live on Tuesday at the 5:05 Eastern, 2:05 Pacific timeline, but that's okay because I still will be talking NWA with you guys, and I still hope you'll check out a video that will premiere at that time. But so let's talk NWA, right? Let's turn the page a little bit. I know that this country's still hurting. I know there's still people out there hurting, and I did quiet my voice on Tuesday so that others could be heard. But today I want to talk wrestling. I want to talk with my friends. I miss you guys. Whether you believe it or not, whether I've said it directly to you guys or not, not JCalView, but the PreParty is a live stream that I've been doing consistently for about 6 months. And many of you guys have been with me since day one, and I'm blown away by your support, and I've always enjoyed talking wrestling with you guys. It's always been the highlight of my Tuesday, and I can't even imagine Tuesdays where I don't do a show, except for next Tuesday, where obviously I won't be. But with that all being said, and I want to say hi to everyone who's watching us on Instagram Live. We have to be better. We will be better. And now I'm officially turning the page so that we could talk some NWA. Now, of course, we're no closer to having episodes of NWA Power than we were last week. And if anything, between the COVID-19 and the riots that are happening all across this country, I'm not exactly sure when we'll have a return to normalcy, when we will see NWA wrestling in the ring again. But I have some thoughts, and if you listen to my podcast that I did with Dave Marquez, which I really think is a good listen, and I'm not just saying that because I was the one interviewing, but I felt like Dave was very transparent and very open about the conversation we had, and I think maybe even more so than he needed to be, which I totally appreciate. But I really felt like he kind of told you guys what was going on, and he even mentioned that the NWA, he mentioned Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, for all intents and purposes, could go back to producing television right now, no questions asked. That their deal with the Ocean View Pavilion, the home of the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, has its own facilities, that building is sanitized daily because of what that building typically is Monday through Friday, which is a special care facility for adults with special needs. But they could be in there right now recording. They could be in there right now having matches. And with Arizona, the sister promotion to Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, that city's already opened up. So they could literally be back to having limited I stuttered. I don't do that very often. They have a limited amounts of opportunity to run events in the Nile Theater. Of course, I still think they would go without an audience, but they could be promoting events now, right now. So, I mean, that's something to look forward to, and who knows? With those two connections, maybe the National Wrestling Alliance will travel out west. And maybe not record whole shows, but maybe a couple of matches here and there. Nothing would be greater to me than to see the world's heavyweight champion get into that ring again and defend that 10 pounds of gold. And we've talked about it on this show. I know my friends over at the NWA podcast go in detail about Nick Aldis, especially Robert Stinson. He kind of goes in on the title reign of Nick Aldis. Now, I'm always going to say there's going to be an asterisk next to his name because for the last 90 days, we haven't had a World's Heavyweight Championship defense. In fact, we haven't seen that title defended since January. And as I said on the podcast I recorded recently, January feels like 5 years ago. So I don't know that. I don't want to discredit Nick Aldis in the slightest, but how is it fair to rank his 600 days with other champions in the past who consistently had to defend it? Now, it's not Nick Aldis' fault at the time that the world has been frozen and nobody can do anything. But with that being said, I really think we need wrestling. I need wrestling. Speaking of Nick Aldis, have you guys been checking out what's Causin Aldis? Clever name, and I love it. But I honestly think if you guys aren't watching this show, you are genuinely missing out on some quality NWA content. Now, I was catching up on episode 2 today with James Storm, who, incidentally, happy belated birthday to Mr. James Storm. I believe he's an 8-time NWA World Tag Team Champion, and, he held that belt with Christopher Daniels. You guys remember that? Held the belt with Wildcat Chris Harris. Wildcat Chris Harris. Oh, God. But he's holding the belt right now with Eli Drake. And I think that's pretty phenomenal. I think it's pretty cool to see that that the NWA World Championship, Tag Team Championship, is with a veteran who respects the NWA and has been that champion for a long time. But getting back to what's causing all this on this second episode that was released on Monday, James Storm joined Nick Aldis on the show, and the way these things are flowing, man, I mean, I know that Nick Aldis is a performer. I know he's a pro wrestler. He's got to entertain. But it feels like you're a fly on the wall just listening to two guys talk about pro wrestling and really kind of give you some insider stories and reflect on their careers, where they were at that time. And I genuinely think that if you aren't watching that show, you're doing yourself a disservice, man. It's really entertaining. I mean, I got to the point where they were talking about the times that Nick Aldis wrestled against, oh gosh, I just forgot his name, Matt Morgan, the American Gladiator versus the British Gladiator. And there's a lot more things like that. Of course, I really enjoyed the first episode with Crimson, because Crimson was kind of dishing the dirt a little bit about the NWA territories in Nashville over the years. You got to remember, when he broke into Tennessee, he broke into wrestling. He wasn't a young guy because he was already a veteran of the military, the Marine Corps, I believe. And so when he got into wrestling, he advanced pretty quickly in that Nashville area, which was heavily associated with the National Wrestling Alliance. And I do believe he worked for Mike Porter, and I know he worked for Burt Prentice. He had a pretty interesting story about Burt Prentice, so I really suggest checking out both What's Causing All This, episode 1 and episode 2. And then Carnyland, guys. I mean, who's going to be the next mayor of Carnyland? I haven't watched episode 2 yet because, again, I was taking a break from social media on Tuesday. So I haven't been able to catch up yet and see Carnyland. But what are your guys' thoughts on Carnyland? You guys have anything positive to say about what's going on in Carnyland? I know Willie Bowen says that NWA Power and Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, California, is the best wrestling on TV and YouTube. And Willie, I will say this, man. I will say this, and I'll hold my hand over my heart, and I'll say this from the bottom of my heart. Wrestling is subjective, and everybody can say whatever they like, and they're not wrong. If you like deathmatch wrestling, then go check out Combat Zone. There's plenty of deathmatch hardcore wrestling promotions for you to follow. Do you like comedy stuff? Hey man, WPW out here in SoCal does some silly stuff. There's DDT in Japan. You can find those silly wrestling promotions. Do you want more sports entertainment? Well, you're not going to find anything more sports entertainment than the World Wrestling Entertainment. But there's also All Elite Wrestling, has more of a more competitive feel to it. Maybe I'm wrong. If you want like traditionally strong style wrestling, I mean, you can check out New Japan. All Japan, I believe, is considered King's Road. But the moral of the story is, what I'm saying is, there is a flavor for everybody. Now, me in particular, I really like Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. I do. I don't watch it as much as I used to because, well, life happens. But I really feel like Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is one of the better, definitely one of the best produced wrestling shows out there. And I really feel like the talent has gotten better and better and better. Currently the Hollywood Heritage Champion is none other than Watts. And Watts competed for the United Wrestling Network Tag Team Champions in that showcase in China. But you got to remember, he's been around for a long time. He's not an overnight sensation. He's been a part of the United Wrestling Network for a while. He was a member of the Family Stone. Yeah, I mean, he had matches with Adam Pearce. He was challenging for that world's title, a decade ago. And well, I'd like to see Watts transition to from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood to the NWA Power, but that's not here nor there. NWA Power, I feel, is a great program. I know that they've lost a lot of steam with everything that's happened, and hopefully that will recover sooner than later. But again, I'm not holding my breath for any of these things to change, nor should you. Trust me, when the NWA starts running again, we'll all know it. Let's see. The other thing I haven't watched yet is the NWA Girl Power, and I think that would be a very fitting episode to watch. I haven't had time to get through there and watch these things. But with all the tragedies, and we talked about this on the last show, cyberbullying, we talked about, we just talked about so much hurt in the world, and leave it to a bunch of leave it to the lady wrestlers, the women, to kind of break it down and talk about some of the things that have been happening. And like I said, it's heartbreaking, but the show goes on. And I hope people watched that and heard what was being discussed and could feel the emotion that was going on. Like I said, I haven't seen all of it yet. I haven't seen any of it yet, but it is on my watch list, and I hope to be seeing it very, very soon. Lamb says that America's Most Wanted was an amazing tag team. I mean, look, what people I don't think realize that at the time they were a team that were kind of thrown together. Like, I don't think they were teaming very much before TNA, but they certainly benefited from that. And I don't think Wildcat Chris Harris even wrestles anymore, but he sure was an interesting guy. I mean, that tag team scene in Impact Wrestling those days. I mean, you had the likes of Team Canada, you had Triple X, you had the Red Shirt Security, which people don't know. Kevin Northcutt wasn't just some dude that they threw a shirt on. I mean, Kevin Northcutt was like a pretty established wrestler in the Southwest region for the National Wrestling Alliance. He was an NWA Southwest champion. I believe he held the NWA, I want to say North American title as well. I didn't research that, but anyways, I'm getting off base here. I kind of lost my train of thought just talking about the tag team division in Impact Wrestling. But fast forward to what James Storm was able to accomplish, and considering that his reputation with the NWA, I mean, look, he's a former national champion. He's a perennial challenge to the World's Heavyweight Championship, and again, 8 times as tag team champion. Like, look, he's basically right there with Ricky and Robert. So, my props to James Storm, as I lost my total train of thought and don't even know what I was talking about. Let me get some water here. I'm thirsty. I kind of expected this show to be an abridged version of the pre-party, because with all due respect, guys, I haven't really felt like partying, and I don't know how many of you guys have either. I do want to suggest my friends over at the NWA podcast, you should check them out. They recently had Thunder Rosa make an appearance on their show, and these guys are getting some good guests, and I got to talk to whoever their booking agent is, because last week they had Thunder Rosa, the week before they had Nick Aldis, and yeah, I'm very happy for Gary Horn, Robert Stinson, and Will Martin, not McMartin. These guys are really kind of putting together something unique, something special, and again, I really like to celebrate the synergy that I think that a lot of the content creators are coming up with for the NWA. I'm glad to be a part of that mix, along with what Adam Rotella is doing. And again, I tip my hat to Mr. Adam Rotella. He kind of was like the initial spark that kind of ignited all this. I wasn't making YouTube videos before Rotella. That's honest. I was happy to do my audio podcast and writing. I wasn't really about making videos, but between Adam and Gary V, it just kind of put me into it. So here I am. Like I said, I didn't really advertise this show, so there's not a whole lot to talk about. I don't have a whole lot of people watching. I don't expect a whole lot of people will be watching later. And by all honesty, I expect my subscriber count to drop. But it is what it is. One of the things I'm working on is I would like to start exploring some of the history of the National Wrestling Alliance. And we actually did this last year when we brought we did the video with Jazz. We called it The Legacy of the Alliance, and it was a little bit of Jazz's time as NWA World Champion. I mean, I interviewed her, and we kind of showcased a little bit of what she was doing and where she traveled and how she became champion and how she, kept that title. And all while I was working on that, she was stripped of the championship. So it kind of was like what are we going to do with this footage? And I still used it because I wanted to celebrate the champion. I wanted to celebrate Jazz's work with the NWA. Now, she was the only second African American women's champion, which I think is pretty cool. So I would like to do more stuff like that, where we kind of focus on some of the history of the NWA. And so for the second episode of Legacy of the Alliance, because it looks like we're doing about once a year, I'm going to go into detail about what was going on around the time that the NWA and the Impact TNA Wrestling agreement ceased to continue their relationship. Now, if you listen to the interview with David Marquez, we kind of talked at length about it. I have other people who want to come on this podcast and talk about their truths to what was going on, which contradict what David Marquez has said. But I just want to talk about the storylines. I want to talk about what was happening, what was being presented, because you had, in Impact Wrestling, you had guys like Christian Cage, Jeff Jarrett, AJ Styles, Sting, Rhino, Raven, Abyss, all challenging for that World's Heavyweight Championship. And these guys were making, well, first of all, they were making money that NWA promoters couldn't afford, but secondly, they were, defending that title basically inside of the Asylum. Or I guess at that point they were at Universal Studios. But it just, it was kind of an island to itself, and not what the NWA was about before, or what the NWA was ever supposed to be. The NWA, there were promoters in the NWA who were running much, much larger venues. I mean, some of them even larger venues than what Impact was running. David Marquez, being one of them, was running a promotion events in the Southwest region, in California, Arizona, Nevada, and they were showcasing Adam Pearce as your NWA Heritage Champion. That title would go on to become the Hollywood Heritage title. But they were missing that big 10 pounds of gold fill. They were running in venues that were the same venues that TNA were running in. The Paul Songus Arena in New Jersey. I think that was New Jersey. Normally, Kushida would be here to correct me, but he's not. But yeah, I really think that those stories should be told. I mean, the NWA was pretty slick, man, because they started releasing these videos. And it started off with Brian Danielson, the American Dragon, who at the time, there was not a greater professional wrestler on this planet. Regardless of what PWI would tell you, Brian Danielson was the man. And, I mean, look, he got his just desserts. Oops, we just lost the camera. Well, it lasted longer than normal. Okay, we're back on. Still having the same issues, guys. I thought I fixed it, but I guess not. It did last for 30 minutes, though, so that's a step in the right direction. But Daniel Bryan was defending that. Daniel Bryan was making his name all across the world. I mean, he was wrestling in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Was one half of the IWGP Tag Team Champions. He was in Ring of Honor, former Ring of Honor World Champion. It was challenging for that title again. Did I misspeak? Now I don't remember if Daniel Bryan actually was a Ring of Honor champion. I think he was. And there was a lot to do with it, but it wasn't just him. It was guys from... It was Damian Wayne from Virginia. It was Chad Parham from Atlanta. It was Psicosis from Mexico. It was Nelson Creed from Canada. It was Chance Prophet from West Virginia. It was Brent Albright from Oklahoma. It was Scrap Iron Adam Pierce from San Diego, California. I mean, the list goes on. And so many people were excited to challenge Christian Cage for this title, and those challenges fell deaf. Impact Pro Wrestling became more and more difficult to work with. The title became more and more harder to book. But I'm going to save the rest of that for another show. And, yeah. Like I said, I didn't prepare much for today. And I'll be honest, this has kind of been a chore today. But I hope when you guys watch this, I hope you enjoy it. Of course, I make these videos as much for me as I do for you, and I hope you're enjoying this Talk NWA. Of course, this is a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. You can follow us on all social medias at the Alliance Blog, and that's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, even Tumblr. Is that still a thing? We still post there occasionally. More of your comments. Willie Bowen says Kevin Northcutt was also an NWA World Tag Team Champion too. You know, I think I knew that, Willie, and I apologize for not pointing that out. But Kevin Northcutt was legit, man. And he was one of those guys that occasionally would pop in and get a shot at the World Heavyweight Champion. He was working in the Southwest area with Ken Taylor. Ken Taylor doesn't get a lot of credit, but that guy was really kind of I don't know, man. He found a way to get some pretty big names to come and work in his area. I mean, besides Hot Stuff Hernandez and besides Kevin Northcutt, I mean, he was known for bringing in Lance Hoyt after his TNA departure. He was known for bringing in guys like Charlie Haas. He had him. Adam Pearce versus Charlie Haas was one of the matches. I mean, that was a pretty crazy deal. There were rumors that they were trying to get Booker T and Adam Pearce. I don't know if that was Ken Taylor or somebody else, but Ken Taylor did a lot to help kind of push that NWA brand. Like I said, Michael Faith, the NWA Oklahoma champion, if you guys remember him. Just a lot of good stuff. Ken Taylor got... I think Ken Taylor got a bad deal when he ended up getting pushed out of the NWA, but for the time that he was around, I really felt like he helped contributed to some of the legacy of the NWA. Something that people seem to forget, and I'm going to get on my high horse here, because just because it's me and Lamb and Willie watching right now, I'm just going to talk about what I want to. But people are always saying that the NWA died when Jim Crockett Promotions was sold to Ted Turner. and WCW was created. But guys, that's not the case. That's actually false information. That's hashtag fake news. Because, first of all, the NWA was never one promotion until now. And even now, I still consider it a sanctioning body because of the partnerships that the NWA has with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Arizona, and the various other places that Nick Aldis has defended the 10 pounds of gold. But the NWA started in 1948. One of the original members of the NWA, not the founding fathers, but one of the original members was Don Owens in Portland. And Portland was an area that was, it was kind of an animal into itself. Matt Bourne wrestled a lot in Portland. Rowdy Roddy Piper wrestled a lot in Portland. Scott Levy, who would become Raven, wrestled a lot in Portland. Let's see, who else? Art Barr, who was known as the Juicer in WCW, who is Gringos Locos in AAA with Eddie Guerrero. Portland was a great territory for a long time. They predated Jim Crockett Promotions and were actually still around after Jim Crockett Promotions sold to WCW. In fact, I do believe that, and I don't have my notes in front of me, so you'll just have to just guessing. I believe it was around 93 is when Portland finally shut its doors down. Maybe it was 94, but I think 93. When you think about that, guys, I mean, we're talking like the 1950s to, the 1990s. That's damn near 50 years, 45 years. So Portland was around during all of that. And then, of course, in 94 is when you got Jim Crockett Jr. promoting wrestling in Dallas. Steve Ricklin was still promoting on and off in New Zealand. New Japan Pro Wrestling carried the NWA name for quite a while in Japan with guys like Masahiro Chono and Kenji Muto, or the Great Muta, however you want to call it. So it wasn't like, the NWA was just dead in the water. It wasn't like they were just not in existence. The NWA was still very much a thing. And then, of course, shortly thereafter that, you had Dennis Coralluzzo running in New Jersey. You had Howard Brody running in Florida. And then the whole deal with the WWF and the invasion in 98. The NWA never stopped running. I mean, let's talk about this. From 94, when they started promoting events in Dallas, to 98, where they're running events with the WWF, or not events, but showcasing their champions with the WWF. That's 4 years, guys. In that time, too, I mean, you're forgetting, I haven't even mentioned Eastern Championship Wrestling, the tournament to crown a new world's champion, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. The NWA just didn't cease to exist. It's never ceased to exist. It's only ever existed or not existed. In 1948, it was created, and it's still active today. Has the ownership changed? Yes. Have the wrestlers changed? Absolutely. But the NWA has never stopped promoting events. So Jim Crockett Promotions was never the NWA. It was a part of the NWA. Lightning One is the NWA. That's for certain. That's not disputable. So yeah. Let me get on my high horse there. So with the NWA never ceasing to exist, 1948, 72 years old, going on 73, I recently posted out there again that I would love to see a return to form and see some former champions come back and challenge our world's heavyweight champion. And I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but I would love to see Scrap Iron Adam Pearce take one last ride, where one last ride meets the Aldis Crusade, right? Where the Standard meets Strictly Business. Where Scrap Iron meets the National Treasure. They both claim Sweet Charlotte. Let them settle in the ring. The UK versus United States, right? Well, it'll probably never happen, but it'd be a lot cooler if it did. So Sorry, I'm kind of squinting down to read the Instagram comments, but damn, so much history, and I'm way too young for all that. Haha. I first heard about the NWA as a WWE Hall of Fame event and saw the title first in TNA in 2005. Yeah, Lamb, you're a baby, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. But yes, the NWA has been around forever, guys. I mean, well, I can't say forever, but since 1948. So it was after World War II when the world was looking to kind of get back to it. It was really benefited from the advent of television when a lot of local markets were producing pro wrestling because wrestling was cheap to produce. You get these, back then there wasn't all these vignettes, there wasn't all this promo stuff, and you went to an arena, you booked pro wrestling, and you videotaped it, and that was it. And the sport has obviously evolved since then, but part of the reason why David Marquez has championship wrestling from Hollywood on in so many markets, Hollywood, Memphis, Amarillo, San Francisco, and continuing to grow that audience, Arizona as well, is because he has a formula. It's inexpensive to produce pro wrestling in this environment, and they're able to take that product and put it in so many different markets. So, and then Willie Bowen says, don't forget about NWA Pro Wrestling affiliates, Houston, Texas with Paul Bosch. Yeah, absolutely. But, yeah. Like I said, guys, I'm sorry this was a little disconnected today. I hope to be put something better together for you next week. Like I said, next week's show will not be a live show, but it will air at 5:05 Eastern, 2:05 Pacific. It will be an episode of the pre-party ahead of Carnyland. I will still encourage you guys to check out all of the NWA offerings right now. You even have an opportunity to become a member of Carnyland by signing up for their Patreon. And, if you want to get a first look into what the NWA is doing, I highly recommend it. I haven't signed up for Carnyland just yet, but I'm debating it. I'm thinking about it, and I'm leaning more towards yes than no. I want to say hi to NWA Championship. If you guys don't know who NWA Championships is, follow him on Instagram, also on Facebook. He recently did a sit-down where he and former NWA North American Champion, former NWA British Commonwealth Champion, that title is often referred to as the Otherworld Champion because of all the traveling that Drew Onyx, the Banjin Bomber, did with that title. They were talking about belt designs, and it's on Facebook. Just check out NWA Championships, and again, he's also on Instagram. I really like what he's doing. He's profiling some of the older titles, some of the older championships, and I recommend checking out what he's doing because I think it's a lot of fun. I'm gonna wind the show down here. I do want to recommend you check out all these NWA content creators. Oh, and I also want to plug NWA Unfiltered. That's usually the first thing I do on these podcasts. Who knows if they're still going to want to be affiliated with me after this episode. But I do have to speak my truths, guys. Like I said, my voice is not a large voice in this industry. I'm not a world-famous podcaster. I don't know how large my reach actually is. I mean, I see that there's 192 subscribers, but I'm sure that number will diminish soon. But I wouldn't be true to myself if I didn't speak up about Black Lives Matter and again reaffirm that I do stand with those who are protesting these injustices in this country. Willie, you had said that NWA has also had an agreement with the Maivia family in Hawaii, Polynesian Pro Wrestling, and All Japan Pro Wrestling, also St. Louis, Missouri. Great NWA Pro Wrestling territories. Willie, absolutely, my friend. You're making the case for me. All Japan Pro Wrestling before New Japan Pro Wrestling. Giant Baba's a 2-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Beat Harley Race for one of those belts. And yeah, there were territories all around. I know that when WWF started buying out the territories and Jim Crockett started doing the same, they were kind of buying up competition, and where that benefited the WWF, it kind of hurt Jim Crockett Promotions. But I digress. We did our we were on here for a good solid 47 minutes. I had a lot less snafus this time than I did previously, so I hope you guys can respect that and appreciate it. But I am definitely grateful for you guys checking us out. I'm definitely grateful that you guys are continuing to support this podcast. If you want to follow like-minded wrestling fans, make sure you check out on Facebook NWA Unfiltered. I hope they still feel the same way about me as they did before the show started. I want to give thanks to Lamb for hooking me up all the time. I like to think of Lamb as my little brother because he's promoting the AllianceWrestling.com website. He shares the content on all social media. I really appreciate that as well. And we'll see what's next, guys. But I will be here next Tuesday in a pre-recorded format, and I hope you guys will tune in. Of course, please visit alliance-wrestling.com for your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, well, let's be honest, it's just gentlemen, I'll see you at the matches.